Hey everybody, my name is Brian Dodd and I'm with Injoy Stewardship Solutions. Hope you're having a great day. It's great to be able to talk to you today. And I'm being joined by my good friend, our Vice President of Consulting, Chad Aukland. And we're going to talk about a very important topic, which is how to raise big money for big projects. So we're going to be talking a lot about readiness and how you know you're ready to embark on that journey. So Chad, great to have you, my friend.
Brian, great to be here, and pastor, church leader, looking forward to this topic. I know a lot of you are sitting there, even maybe today, wondering, man, how are we going to accomplish this? This is such a huge undertaking. That's why Brian and I are here. That's why Injoy is here, to help you really position yourself to take confident steps into this process.
Yeah, definitely. And Chad, before we kind of dive into some success links and things of that nature to help the pastors and church leaders out, let's talk about the very basics of a capital campaign, or we can call it a generosity initiative, season of giving, journey of generosity, whatever term best fits that particular church environment. Why is this a defining moment in the life of a church?
Yeah. Honestly, it's a church positioning themselves to take their next step in their season of ministry. You know, one of the things we've learned after having done this over 30 years as an organization is that God gives pastors and church leaders tremendous vision, tremendous dreams. But a lot of times what's standing in the way is not being able to resource those visions and those dreams, not having enough money, if you will, or even people or time to resource that vision. And so this is a moment, a defining moment in such a way that it gets them past maybe that speed bump or even through that wall that they have been facing potentially for years. And whether it's been fear, inability to understand strategy, whatever has been standing in their way, this process helps them get past that and move into their next season of ministry. And a lot of times with that comes tremendous growth. Not only internally from a spiritual perspective, but when you expand your facilities, when you expand your footprint, you have room to bring in more people and expose them to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we say here all the time that, you know, every church has a ministry plan, but that ministry plan needs a facility plan to help facilitate it.
That's right.
And then it needs a funding plan to help be the fuel for all this to take place. Yeah. All right, so we're talking to church leaders now. They know intuitively something needs to happen. They're out of space. Things may feel dated. It's not as functional as it used to be. Debt could be happening, and maybe we may be talking about debt retirement campaign. They may need to plan a new campus. It could be a number of different things. But are we ready? Okay, are we ready? How do we know that, okay, let's pull the trigger on this, let's go? Okay? So I'm going to bring up the first one and get you to kind of unpack it a little bit. Let's just talk about the vision for the campaign itself.
So the vision for the campaign must fall in line with the vision that God has given you for the church. And so what I mean by that is we can't be running perpendicular tracks.
Okay.
We can't even be running parallel tracks. The vision for the campaign must help you grow closer to accomplishing the overall vision that God has given you for the church.
Okay, so it's a natural next step.
It is a natural next step, absolutely. And it's important, just like with the vision for the church, the vision for the campaign, it's got to be clear. There's got to be clarity. Okay. You know, 17 paragraphs isn't clarity. One paragraph isn't clarity. What's that tweetable statement? And I know it used to be 140 characters or less, and they've expanded that. I would say let's keep it at 140 characters or less.
Okay.
What is that compelling that clear message that needs to be communicated to get people on board?
Okay. So clear has to do with clarity, and it's understandable.
Understandable.
Okay. If I'm talking to somebody in the parking lot about why we're doing this campaign, I can communicate that. The tweetable part is it needs to be crisp.
Fast.
Okay. And crisp also makes it repeatable.
That's right.
It makes it portable.
That's right.
So I'm in your congregation, you explain it, I can now go in the parking lot, and whoever I influence, I can repeat it.
Yeah.
There's a third C that we like to talk about, compelling. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, let me go back just a second to crisp.
All right.
I was with a church in Mississippi, and we were sitting in a room, and the pastor was casting the vision for the campaign to his staff. And he got done, and he was, like a lot of pastors, he was fairly verbose, which I know that's shocking to most pastors to hear. But at the end of his communication, one of his lead staff people raised their hand and just said, "Pastor, that was fantastic. But there's no way I'm going to be able to communicate that if somebody asks me, what are we doing and why are we doing it? I need what he referred to as an elevator pitch." Okay. And so, your people, they want to be an extension of your voice, Pastor. They want to communicate when you're not available and there, what you would communicate. But we need to set them up to be able to do that effectively. That's where the crispness of the message comes into play.
Okay.
So people can actually carry it, communicate it with passion, and others can kind of sink, if you will, their talons into it. And then we do get to that third C, that compelling. What about the vision is going to get somebody to the place where they want to be involved? They're compelled to take action and participate in making this a reality.
Okay. Walk us through some of the things that would make somebody want to take action, because we don't naturally default to generosity and sacrifice. We default to greed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So walk me through some things you've seen that would make me be willing to take that journey.
Yeah, so I'm a fairly straightforward, kind of black and white guy. I don't have a lot of gray area in my life. And I lead in capital campaigns when we partner with churches, kind of in that same vein. Okay. And so what I'm about to say, don't be offended by, but it's really important to understand most people, Pastor, they don't care about your project. They don't care about your building. They don't care about your debt. They don't care about your expansion. They don't care about your fill in the blank. Here's what they care about. How is that going to help us as a ministry be more effective at reaching more people for Jesus? This isn't rocket science. The compelling piece is the outreach piece.
Right.
What are the causes that our investment is going to help further the kingdom? And so the compelling pieces are those ministry impact pieces, those life change pieces. That's what people get excited about. I've got a 27-year-old daughter. She's the classic millennial, okay? She might, for the rest of her life, I hope this isn't the case for her, she might have debt for the rest of her life. So you, Pastor, having debt and asking her to pay that off doesn't compel her. But when you tell the story behind what we're going to be able to do with the freed up resources by way of reaching more people for Jesus and seeing more ministry impact, that is going to get her excited. But it's not just the millennials. It's in the same way the boomers and the busters. We're all driven by causes, by purpose, and by ministry impact. Yeah. That's the compelling side of this.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, we embedded in all this, the making the ministry happen, the advancing the gospel, the reaching the more people for Jesus, the lives being changed. Now we're going to talk about the second part, which is the project or the facility. Project is anything you want to raise funds for, so that can be debt as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that now ties in. What do we know about this vision and the project and how they connect? What's their relationship?
Yep. So the vision, I would say, is the why.
Okay,
that's the why piece. The project is the what. That's important. Even though people may not be as compelled by your project as you want them to be, there still does need to be a tangible what. Mm-hmm. We're not asking people to give over and above just because. They need to have a target to aim at. Because the old adage, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time.
Right.
So what are we aiming at? So the project, again, clearly identified. We can't be ambiguous. Well, we hope for this, we hope for this, we hope for this. No, what are the 2 or 3 things that you're going to do with the funds raised by way of a project? Is it a building? Is it a missions emphasis? Are you hiring staff? Are you expanding? Are you paying off debt? Are you renovating? What are the project elements, and are they easily identified so people can not only see the why, but they can marry that with the what?
So when they say, hey, Pastor, I love you, I love our church, I love what God's doing, I'm totally in. What exactly am I giving money to?
That's exactly right.
Okay. Another thing about that I want you to speak to on the urgency or the project is the urgency piece.
Yeah.
If somebody says, hey, it'd be nice to expand our lobby, it'd be nice to pay off some debt, is nice compelling?
No.
Okay.
No. Again, urgency of the project comes into play as well. Now, project urgency today is very different than project urgency. I'm just going to use COVID as kind of that line of demarcation, because lots has changed in the project business, if you will, post-COVID. It's taking much longer for churches to ramp up and be ready to put a shovel in the ground. One of the biggest reasons for that is costs have increased so exponentially. So when I say project urgency, pre-COVID, hey, are you going to be putting a shovel in the ground? Are you going to be executing payment, additional payment on this debt within a 6-month period of time? Urgency now can be as long as 18 months. Hey, 18 months from now, we're going to put a shovel in the ground because we want to make sure we have X number of dollars on hand, because our project versus pre-COVID, it's doubled.
Yeah.
I have a church in Illinois right now who, when they started with us almost 3 years ago, their project was $9 million. Today, their project is just south of $17 million.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that I totally understand. I'd like to give a personal story too of how we top
Absolutely.
the vision, particularly the compelling piece in the project. It's my home church where I attend, and you led that campaign.
Yeah.
Did a fantastic job. And part of what we're doing, we're expanding our lobby space, but we're really expanding our children's space.
Right.
And our mission statement, our vision, is to help people find their way home. And we do that by loving God, loving people, and living sent. Well, every week we're having to turn children away.
Wow.
And so the compelling nature is, in our current facility, ministry facility and funding, in our current facility, we can't facilitate any more children finding their way home.
Right.
And so that is how the vision of the church aligning with the vision of the campaign, with the urgency of the project, those two come together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I remember having a conversation with your pastor.
Yeah.
And I said to him, or I asked him, why is the children's piece compelling? And he immediately responded. And he said, because for the last 21 years, we've not done anything new from a facility perspective for our children.
Right.
Hugely compelling.
Right.
And the people responded in that way.
Right, definitely. Okay, so there's a third part, and you just brought it up, okay? You talked to the pastor.
Yeah.
So leadership is the third. So the first is the vision, second's the project, now it's leadership.
Yeah.
Tell us about leadership and the role it plays in raising big money for big projects.
Leadership is huge, and I would say there's one massive piece within that leadership space that is vitally important to the success of any initiative, let alone a capital initiative, and that is a unified leadership. One of the things that we do at Injoy is we help a church on the front end walk through the development of a case statement or a case for support. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And what are we asking from the people by way of participation? Okay? Making sure that everyone in your leadership is singing off of that same sheet of music is vitally important. Now, Pastor, I'm sure this doesn't exist at your church, but I'm sure at other churches this exists.
We've heard about it.
We've heard about it. So it's likely it's out there somewhere. The person that wants to cause dissension. And so if Brian and I were at the same church on staff, and let's say Brian was the senior pastor, and they came to Brian and said, hey, Brian, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And he recollects what he wrote in that case statement and communicates that, then that same person comes to me as a staff person and says, hey, what are we doing and why are we doing it? In a lot of cases, they're hoping that we give a different answer.
Right.
So that they can see that break in the leadership, that break in the unity. But because we would have done such a great job, not only in developing that case for support, but making sure that our leaders are an extension of, in this case, your voice as the senior pastor, we present a unified front. We present a unified leadership, and it breaks down any of that potential dissension. Not to say that there aren't going to be people that don't agree with your project. There will be. Or your process, there will be. But as it relates to our messaging as leaders, We are unified. There's no break in that unity, and we're moving forward together to help execute on this project and on this initiative collectively.
Yeah, that's so good. And let me explain practically. I'll just use me and my church again as an example.
Absolutely.
So let's say that the pastor casts the vision, okay? I receive it, but I have a level of influence within the church. So I'm at Starbucks or out to dinner, or I'm in the parking lot, and I'm talking with people. And once again, people don't drift to generosity, they drift to greed. They're looking for a break.
Right.
And if they talk to me and I don't echo that, then what happens is, and they're like, well, I think we should actually, open a campus or plant a church, and let's reach them that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Then that hurts that person's level of participation that I influence.
Right.
So, the unified leadership team that's got public and private support, answering questions, not asking them.
Huge.
Yep. Huge force multiplier in a campaign.
100%.
Now, in terms of leadership, that leads to our fourth thing, congregational trust. Tell us about that.
Pastor, I just want to speak to you for a second. If you're thinking about moving into something significant, whether it's a capital initiative or something else that's going to be, something that involves your entire church, you have to ask yourself the question first: does the congregation that God has called me to lead at this time trust me? And it's not a matter of them trusting you specifically, but you're the leader of an organization that they have been a part of maybe for a long time, even a part of before you got there. And there might be something that fractured that trust before you got there. And you, maybe even unknowingly, have inherited that lack of trust. Making sure that your congregation trusts you and any potential trust fractures have been dealt with is of the utmost importance. Let me give you just a quick story. And again, I'll not communicate the names, but I've got a church in South Georgia that it was actually my first ever capital campaign that I did. And they were raising money for debt. And one of the questions I asked the pastor was, are there any unresolved trust issues? No. Nothing. Everything's great. It's fantastic. Wonderful. Moved on, went through the campaign. We didn't hit our goal. And I was a little bit perplexed because we seemed to have tremendous support. People were excited about it. We had some significant participation by way of size of gifts, but they missed their goal by about $300,000. And so I sat back with the pastor and executive pastor about a week after commitments. And I said, Pastor, I know I've asked you this question before, but could there be any unforeseen trust issues that are still lingering? Maybe not since you've been pastor, but prior to you. And he immediately shook his head no. Well, I told you I was with his executive pastor too.
Right.
And his executive pastor said, Pastor, oh yeah, absolutely. Do you remember the last capital campaign we did, because the senior pastor was in a staff role at the time? We told our people we were going to raise money for X, and the money actually went to Y.
Right.
And they never asked permission to reallocate those funds. There's a lot of people that I've talked to that didn't participate in this campaign because they're waiting to see that what we told them they're going to raise the money for is actually where the dollars are going to go. So you might have to think back. You might have to do some research, have some conversations. Are there any unresolved trust issues? But I would say of these four, Brian, a trusting congregation could easily be the number one most important piece of these four components.
Okay. Something you talked about that I think is important to unpack. When we say trust, we're not talking solely or specifically about the pastor's character.
No, it could be.
It could be,
yeah.
But it could also be execution.
Right.
It could be broken promises from the past. It could be, in your case, an issue before he became the pastor.
100%. Could be with another current staff person.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So basically the ability to identify anything.
To identify and to remedy.
That was going to be my follow-up question. So once it's identified, walk us through how to repair trust.
Yeah.
And it'll vary depending on the issue, but
yeah. Take the time to be intentional about it. And this might mean, Pastor, you've got to extend your runway by 6 months.
Okay.
I've never had a pastor say to me, my runway was too long. I've had a lot of pastors say to me, wow, that felt rushed. That was too fast. And so if helping remedy these trust issues takes a little bit longer than you'd like, trust us, on the back end of this process, what you've done to remedy that trust will not only help you in this initiative, but it will help you as a leader be more effective as you're leading this congregation. What you will have done by remedying that trust is you will have put more leadership change or capital in your pocket than you ever could have before you addressed those trust issues.
Okay. So since you said trust is arguably the most important before, I want to spend a little more time on it. I want to ask 2 questions about pastors who have trust. Okay. Number one, let's talk about, how do you gain trust? How did that pastor get trust to begin with?
Yeah. So I say it this way. Trust takes a lifetime to build, but it's lost in a moment.
Okay.
And so trust, when it comes to the pastor, a lot of times it does have to do with character. It does have to do with integrity. It does have to do with effectiveness as a leader. It does have to do with, building relationships and developing relationships and doing life together with your people, with your church, with your leaders, making sure that you're investing, not just you personally, but even your staff team, as they're an extension of you as the leader. They're investing in the people that call your church home. So again, be intentional and take the necessary time it will take to develop that trust.
Yeah, you've talked about investment and being intentional and things like that. The way I've always heard it taught is the way you gain trust is wise and timely decisions over an extended period of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But time is the common denominator.
Yeah. Okay, now that leads to my second question. What happens if the pastor hasn't had time? What happens if he's only been there 3 years or less?
Yeah. Consider taking the time.
Okay.
I worked with a church in Tennessee, and the pastor had been there less than a year. And I remember vividly walking to my car after my first meeting with him. And he said to me, I'm only doing this because the church made me do it upon being hired. He said, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do everything you tell me to do, because when it doesn't go well, I'm going to blame you. Well, that was a huge red flag for me.
Yeah.
Huge red flag that we needed to take a little bit more time to help this pastor, first of all, be able to breathe, because that communication to me shared a lot of uncertainty about maybe even his future there. And so that also told me he's not had the time to build the trust. He's not had the time to put that capital or that change in his pocket, if you will, to spend on a campaign. And so take the time to build the trust. I said it before and I'll say it again. A longer runway is never a bad thing.
Okay. Can that pastor who's been forced to do this, can they borrow the trust of trusted people on their leadership team, like a elder or church mother or somebody like that?
Yeah, this particular pastor had one guy on his elder team.
Okay.
It's 7 elders. He had one guy that was really his advocate. And so the pastor, myself, and this gentleman sat down, and I was able to share with this gentleman what the pastor shared with me. And so, again, I was able to help. This elder was able to help. And we extended the runway by a year.
Oh, good. Okay.
And we were able to give that pastor time to build trust, to get into the rhythm of his new position, to make sure that, I hate to even say this, he was going to stick, because this is another webinar for another day, but major leadership transition can fracture a campaign just about as bad as anything.
Yeah, definitely. I talked about my church earlier.
Yeah.
And my pastor has unbelievable trust.
Unbelievable.
And unbelievable trust with me personally.
Sure.
So all he has to do for me is say, hey, Brian, I'd like for you to do something. And I'm like, okay, whatever you want me to do, yeah, I'm thrilled to do it.
Yeah.
If you've got that level of trust, I'm thinking the way you steward it is you better be able to answer a lot of questions, because I'm already bought in, but now my level of buy-in is tied to questions. So
you said it earlier.
Okay.
We want our leaders to be answering and not asking questions.
Okay, very good.
So, again, pour into them. Answer all their questions. Make sure you get answers to their questions if you don't have them, so that as they are an extension of your voice, they're answering those questions for people and not continuing to ask.
Okay. So final thing I want to talk about on this that's really, you can't measure it, but we all know it's real. So you've got a vision, clear, crisp, and compelling, clearly defined project that's a catalyst for making a reality. Leaders are aligned. They're answering questions, not asking them, and you got congregational trust. What role does momentum play in terms of readiness to get started?
Yeah. I mean, momentum is huge. You know, we run a financial analysis for every church when we begin a partnership with them. And I tell every single church I partner with, you never want to use a capital campaign to get momentum. You want to have momentum at multiple levels that you can ride into a capital campaign. So that could be momentum financially. You could be expecting tremendous growth one year to the next. That could be momentum numerically. You're seeing tremendous numerical growth in your church. That can be momentum spiritually. You're seeing a huge number of baptisms and life change and ministry impact. We want to see momentum at multiple levels before we jump into a capital campaign.
So ironically, in a ministry context, momentum is measurable.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, pastor and church leader, if you're listening to this, you probably intuitively know that it's time to raise big money for big projects, which is why you're listening to Chad and I. We've given you a framework for decision making. If you want to know more about this, we've put together this very comprehensive e-resource. It's attached in a link below. You can just click it, download that, get some additional information. But I would like to also tell you this. God has given you a window of opportunity if you fit this criteria. And there is a difference between sensing opportunity and seizing it. And so if you are ready to begin seizing this opportunity, taking advantage of the window of opportunity that God's given you, our contact information is below. We'd love to start a conversation with you, talk more about your readiness, talk more about these success links that we've talked about, and maybe even get Chad or a member of his team talking to you as well. So we thank you for your time today. It's helped me, so I hope it's helped you, but it's definitely helped me. Chad, thank you for everything.
Thanks, Brian. It's been great.
All right, God bless.